I'm going to talk to you about importance of nutrition for females in reproductive years. It's not a part. I mean, it's just a message for girls to be vigilant about their diet if they are in the reproductive years. Because what I'm going to tell them, I'm sure a lot of you must not be aware, so that you can correct your diet and be a good mother and have a wonderful outcome of your pregnancy. Now, adolescence means a process of developing from childhood to an adulthood. It's a period of rapid growth and changes, and during this period, a child can develop unhealthy habits and, on the other hand, inactivity. Now, what do adolescents prefer to eat? These days, you see, this girl is just enjoying French fries. You saw Amy's story just now. My God, three hot dogs and all those things. And here, this is a lady sitting on a can of, Coca-Cola. And here is the lady who seems to be a little sensible. She's just trying to manipulate which one is better. Whether it's shall I go for the apple or shall I go for a pie? And here is a girl who's smiling because she's got a plate of salad, and here is a girl enjoying juice, and you have healthy sandwiches here. So adolescence is the most important period of transition in life, a period between 10 to 20 years of age of growth and development, during which major biological, physical, and social changes take place. Now, it requires proper knowledge of health, diet, and hygiene. As I said, we saw a girl with chips, and then we saw a girl with the nice sandwiches. So it depends how you've been groomed and what your choices are. So, and lack of timely information and guidance on these facts can cause complications for individuals in adulthood. Now, in less developed economies like India, adolescent girls face challenges in identifying their true health and hygiene status. When these issues are not adequately addressed, the adolescent's self-awareness suffers and health and hygiene related problems result. Now, I'm going to talk to you about Barker's hypothesis. Barker, he's a professor at Southampton University who proposed, way back when I was studying in England, a three-generation effect of nutritional status on an individual. So it is not just what you eat, what the way your baby is going to be. It is actually what you eat, what your mother ate, and what your mother's mother, that is your grandmother, ate. So it's a three-generation effect on what how your baby is going to be. So you are what your grandmother ate and what your mother ate. So the nutritional status depends on three generations. Here you see he wrote a book called Fetal Origins of Adult Diseases. So in this, he has very clearly said that programming of adult diseases in fetal life, the Barker hypothesis has proposed fetal in utero environment as a significant determinant of risk for major chronic diseases such as cardiovascular diseases, stroke, hypertension, type 2 diabetes, and obesity later in life. Now, he proposed a relationship between birth weight and blood pressure levels. Low birth weight babies who survived infancy and childhood might be at an increased risk of coronary heart disease later in life. And how does it happen? Now, studies have shown that there's a link between maternal nutrition during pre-implantation period to abnormalities in blastula formation. The relationship is between intrauterine milieu and adverse postnatal consequences, size at birth, and diseases that are known risk factors for coronary heart disease, including hypertension, type 2 diabetes mellitus, and hyperlipidemia. In other words, we're talking about metabolic syndrome. So altered fetal nutrition has adverse consequences on later life. Now, it is an obvious, fetal nutrition is the key regulator of fetal growth, so it's an obvious candidate as a possible programming influence. Both birth weight and placental weight are affected by balance of macronutrients in the maternal diet. Imbalance of protein and carbohydrate intake during pregnancy has been associated with reduced birth weight and increased blood pressure in the offspring. Now, micronutrients also play an important role in programming of postnatal pathophysiology. So if you have a look at this figure is showing you altered fetal nutrition is a leading cause, directly or indirectly, um, um, to altered growth and maturation of various fetal organ systems. So here you see this if there is altered maternal nutrition and abnormal placenta and altered uterine blood flow, this all leads to delay in the phase of development, altered fetal and nutrition, and altered organ growth and maturation. So here you see a list of liver, pancreas, muscles, then a hypothalamus, pituitary, adrenal axis, then kidneys, vasculature, and heart. So what you're seeing is liver. If this happens, then liver can be affected, and then there can be increased gluconeogenesis and reduced lipid metabolism, leading to hyperlipidemia. Eventually, we're going to talk about metabolic syndrome and coronary heart disease. Pancreas would lead to decreased insulin secretion, impaired glucose intolerance. Muscle would have a reduced insulin sensitive tissues, and there'll be increased cortisol secretion. Kidneys would have lesser number of nephrons, and the vasculature would be defective, and the heart would have less number of myocytes. Eventually there would be hyperlipidemia, diabetes, and hypertension and stroke. These are all part of metabolic syndrome leading, and also coronary heart disease. So it's the most important message here is a prospective mother should take healthy and balanced diet for normal development of the fetus. So the focus of my talk is going to be on hypertension and subclinical metabolic syndrome, that is obesity, dyslipidemia, insulin resistance, and nutritional approach. So everything is going hand in hand. Now, if you have a look at this globe, the overall prevalence of hypertension in adults is around 30 to 40%, 30 45%, with a global age standardized prevalence of 24% in men and 20% in women. This was in 2015. Now, it has been estimated that by 2025, there'll be 1.56 billion individuals who will have hypertension. That is, there'll be an increase of 60% from 2000 in the number of people having hypertension. Now, normal blood pressure, we all know, is systolic less than 120 millimeters of mercury, and diastolic less than 80 millimeters of mercury. And anything beyond this is elevated blood pressure, stage 1, stage 2, or hypertensive crisis. Now, there are certain demographic correlates of blood pressure and hypertension. Age is one of them. High blood pressure is associated with significant increase in cardiovascular events. It's not, we can't debate on this. So blood pressure is considerably low in children than in adults, and increases steadily throughout the first 2 decades of life. In adults, cross-sectional and longitudinal surveys have shown that systolic and diastolic blood pressure increase progressively with age. This WHO Monica survey has shown systolic blood pressure increased by about 0.29 to 91 millimeters of mercury per year in men, and in females, it increased by 0.6 to 1.31 millimeters of mercury per year. Now here you can see is the age gradient expressed as a regression coefficient for systolic blood pressure in men and women of the Monica study population. And this figure is showing you the blood pressure levels in 41 population of WHO Monica survey. And here you can see that there is an association between 8 standardized mean values of body mass index and the systolic blood pressure. Now, in non-industrialized countries, normally you would see they do not the people do not experience increase of blood pressure and hypertension, because these populations have a special characteristic that they have a low dietary salt intake. Now, when these populations become more industrialized or migrate to a more industrialized society, the blood pressure and hypertension prevalence increases with age in this population, because we know that there is a rise in blood pressure when people on low salt diets with normal blood pressure adopt to Western lifestyles and increase their sodium intake. Now, meta-analysis of randomized trials have shown that on an average, reducing sodium intake by approximately 80 mmol per day is associated with approximately 4 and 2 millimeters of mercury reduction in systolic and diastolic blood pressure in the hypertensive respectively. Now, in the Paleolithic times, the ancestors evolved on a diet containing relatively modest amount of sodium that was less than 50 mmol per day. Now, sodium intake is in present time exceeds an extreme amount of 100 to 200 mmol per day. Now, what happens? Blood pressure, we know, is directly proportional to the total body sodium content, and the usual sodium intake is about 3.5 to 5.5 grams per day, which corresponds to 9 to 2 grams of salt per day globally. So excessive sodium consumption of more than 5 grams per day causes increased fluid volume and consequently hypertension and the rise in systolic blood pressure with age. So an excess dietary salt intake leads to dose-dependent increase in blood pressure, renal and vascular damage, left ventricular hypertrophy, abnormal ECG, and premature mortality. Now, if you have a look at this figure, it's a very interesting figure. It's showing you the effect of sodium increases with age. So if a person between the age of 20 to 29 is consuming 100 mmol of sodium, the rise in blood pressure is by 5 millimeters of mercury. But if this, with the same amount, if a person between the age of 60 to 69 is taking the same amount of sodium, that is 100 mmol, the increase in systolic blood pressure will be by 10.3 millimeters of mercury, which is exorbitant. Then the corresponding effect of diastolic blood pressure is 2.6 and 4.3 millimeters of mercury per 100 mmol of sodium respectively. So all I'm trying to say here is that sodium restriction is really important. High sodium intake and an increase in blood pressure levels are related because they cause water retention, increase in systemic peripheral resistance, alterations in the endothelial function, changes in the structure and function of large arteries, modification in sympathetic activity, and in the autonomic neuronal modulation of the cardiovascular system. Now, although most diagnosed hypertension has no obvious direct cause, yet dietary salt or sodium has been suggested to be an important etiological factor. Hence, salt has been declared as dysfunctional food. Now, there are certain anthropometric correlates of blood pressure and hypertension. For girls, this particular study has shown that for girls of African American origin and Caucasian girls, pre-hypertension prevalence is nearly 5 times higher in obese girls and about 2 to 3 times higher in overweight girls. Now, prevalence of hypertension is approximately 4 to 5 times greater in obese girls and approximately twice as high in overweight girls. So BMI is the strongest predictor of hypertension incidence in girls. Hence, girls have to watch out their weight. Now, obesity, we know, has serious implications on future health risk factors. So obesity results from positive net bound energy balance when more calories are consumed than expended. So the girls have to, and actually everyone has to reduce total saturated fats from snacks, increase fiber content of diet, and more diet, and increase more grain intake of grains, vegetables, fruits, and legumes. Now, overweight and obesity is affecting 3 to 24% of adolescent girls in South Asian countries. Consumption of fast foods and foods high in fat and sugar, such as chocolates, cakes, pastries, and ice creams, and biscuits and sugary drinks, these are all increasing their weight, and our youngsters are moving towards obesity. Now, if the mother is obese, when she starts her pregnancy, she is at an increased risk of complications during pregnancy or delivery, which could result in premature delivery and a low birth weight for her baby. Now, if she carries the baby to full term, then her baby is more likely to have a high birth weight and a high risk of child and adolescent obesity. Subjects who report a family history of diabetes are much more likely to be obese and to have the higher concentration of serum lipids. Now, studies support the presence of metabolic syndrome in which insulin resistance provides a common pathway for the development of hypertension, diabetes, obesity, hyperlipidemia, and hyperuricemia. So increasing exposure to unhealthy diabetogenic environment factors such as high intake of calorie-rich refined foods and sedentary life may accelerate the development of diabetes in young people who are predisposed to developing this disease. So the best thing is moderation. The fat should be taken in moderation and include, a high fiber diet. You should take more of complex carbohydrates, fiber, calcium, and antioxidants such as vitamin C, E, and carotenoids. Now, fruits and vegetables are high in nutrients and fiber and relatively low in calories and hence have a high nutrient density. So eating foods from each of the different food groups helps ensure that all nutrient needs are met. Now here, this particular study has shown if healthy eating habits develop during adolescence, they will develop the boys and girls who develop, have good health. About 46% of women in Uttaranchal are anemic compared to 52% for India as a whole. And the onset of menarche further predisposes the underprivileged girls to anemia. And Uttaranchal is a is a region with poor health, and we have and the study has shown that there are 59% of girls do not drink milk every day, 67% do not eat curd every day, and 53% do not consume fruit every day. 48% do not consume vegetables on a daily basis. So, which is like they are having an imbalance in diet. So, girls in whom hypertension, this is another study which was published in Journal of Pediatrics in 2010. It has shown that girls in whom hypertension developed were more from lower household income groups, and here you can see that they had higher BMI, they had higher waist circumference, they had lower dietary fiber intake, and the potassium intake was also on the lower side. Magnesium intake was low, and the calcium intake was low, and they had higher caffeine and calorie intake. So healthy eating habits and physical activity remain important keystones, stones for promoting health from younger age, including favorable blood pressure levels. Diet rich in fruits, vegetables, and dairy, and increased physical activity are associated with lower blood pressure. The results of this study have shown that higher intake of fiber, potassium, magnesium, and calcium, which reflect a healthy dietary pattern, is associated with never attaining high blood pressure levels. And here, if you have a look at this figure is showing you that there is always a evidence of presence of borderline glucose intolerance in and of course the metabolic syndrome in hypertensive individuals. So one has to be careful of that even if you are having a tendency towards hypertension, then you could develop insulin resistance. And here you can see the plasma levels are significantly, plasma insulin levels are significantly high in hypertensive individuals. So insulin resistance and increased insulin levels precede increases in blood pressure. This has been proven without doubt. Now, the most interesting thing is we are all dealing with kidney patients. So we are more interested in what happens to the offsprings of hypertensive patients, parents. So this study has shown that there are certain renal changes in offsprings of hypertensive parents. Renal function reserves are in this study, they evaluated these functions by measurement of the changes in creatinine clearance after an oral protein load of 45 grams per meter square. So what they found was that all children in the control group significantly increased their creatinine clearance after the protein load, but the children who were of hypertensive patients, this thing was impaired. 40% of the offspring showed no detectable changes, that they were which means that they were non-responders. So here you can see that the renal function reserves and microalbuminuria in offspring of hypertensive patients is much higher compared to what you expect in the controls. So offsprings of hypertensive parents presented higher microalbuminuria level in 24-hour urine specimens. So absence of renal functional reserves and increased microalbuminuria in some normotensive children who are offsprings of essential hypertensive parents can indicate that subtle alterations in renal function may precede the onset of clinical hypertension. Data from 1991 onwards indicate a higher hypertension prevalence in women. In RAIN's 1999-2002 survey, it has shown hypertension prevalence was 29% in women versus 27.8% in men. And in addition, women demonstrated the largest increase in hypertension prevalence between 1988 and 2000. Now, if there's a family history of hypertension, it is associated with increase in prevalence and incidence of hypertension. Both genetic and environmental factors appear to contribute to this association. In cross-section study of more than 5,000 adults, a family history of hypertension was associated with high diastolic blood pressure, BMI, cholesterol, and obesity. And here you can see that this figure is showing you when comparing cardiovascular risk factors in normotensive individuals, so the family history of hypertension to individuals with and without family history of hypertension, there was no difference amongst the groups. However, all the groups were significantly worse off compared to the normotensive individuals without a family history of hypertension. So one has to be careful with the kind of diet the person is having. So young children of parents with hypertension are at increased risk of hypertension, and this show higher levels of systolic blood pressure compared to those of parents of children with whose parents are not having hypertension. So family history of hypertension is also associated with development of pregnancy-related hypertension, especially if two or more first-degree relatives have hypertension. So females with family history of hypertension should adopt lifestyle changes to prevent hypertension and to prevent hypertension in their offsprings. Now, there is evidence that hypertension is relatively a late manifestation of disease process. Thus, normotensive people with family history have been classified as normotensive hypertensives. The ECG findings in normotensive children of normotensive parents, when compared to matched offsprings of hypertensive parents, had significantly greater left ventricular wall thickness and muscle mass despite normal blood pressure. So lifestyle programs lower blood pressure by 3 millimeters of mercury, lower smoking rate by 4%, and decrease mortality by almost 3%. So miscellaneous correlates of blood pressure and hypertension are sedentary lifestyle, low educational level, low socioeconomic status, low occupational class, psychological factors such as hostility and time urgency, impatience due to job strain, depression, low birth weight, and high serum uric acid level. So the take-home message of my talk is follow Mediterranean and DASH diet patterns for healthy pregnancy, for in order to have healthy kids. Girls should take proper nutrition in order to lead active and healthy life, and should be able to prevent giving birth to underweight babies. In India, 45% of adolescent girls are underweight and 56% are anemic. And the childbearing occurs mostly at ages between 15 to 25 or 35, when Indian women are most likely to be underweight or anemic. On an average, it has been shown that the gain of weight during pregnancy is of 7 kgs for a full-term pregnancy, which contributes to the incidence of low birth weight, wasting, stunting in the children. So ideally, what should the girl be eating? Food security, in the food insecurity, dieting and illness can impair growth and development during adolescence. Iron deficiency anemia, micronutrient deficiencies, particularly zinc deficiency, is common in females. Therefore, the food planning should take into consideration 6 common conditions prevalent in the general population, that is anemia, micronutrient deficiencies, hypertension, diabetes, obesity, and worm infestations in developing countries. So diet should be the main source of for vitamins and trace elements. Vitamin B and folic acid should be obtained from the diet, and girls should take at least 2 servings of fruits to ensure adequate potassium in diet. Now, this is Mediterranean diet, which is abundant in fruits and vegetables. And we know that and people living following the Mediterranean diets do not have, I mean, they have lower blood pressures compared to people who do not follow Mediterranean diet. There is abundance of legumes cooked, which are cooked regularly with tomato, garlic, and onions. Moderate intake of fish. There's moderate dairy product involved in this, included in this diet. There's moderate wine, small portions of meat and poultry, and little consumption of candies. And the key characteristic of this diet is low amount of animal and trans fatty acids, extra virgin oil, which is the primary source of fat. So in order to lead a healthy life, you can add yogurt to the diet to increase probiotics, and this is how the Mediterranean diet looks. So this diet is low in saturated fats with total lipid intake ranging from less than 30% to and 40% of energy. The ratio of mono unsaturated to saturated fats is about 2:1. This diet assures an adequate intake of beta carotene, vitamin C, tocopherols, linoleic acids, minerals, and beneficial non-nutrient substances such as polyphenols and anthocyanins, and it assures an adequate intake of vitamin A and minerals. Now, this is how effective the Mediterranean diet is in controlling metabolic syndrome. So you can see that there is beneficial effect on waist circumference, HDL cholesterol, triglycerides, blood pressure levels, and glucose metabolism, antioxidants, and anti-inflammatory effects because of olive oil, fruits and vegetables, and whole grains and fish. And this is OmniHeart trial, which has shown that if carbohydrates are partially replaced by unsaturated fats, predominantly the monounsaturated fats, it lowers blood pressure and triglycerides and increases HDL cholesterol. And here, this study is also important, and it's worth mentioning that plasma L-arginine levels, if you take more of it, if you increase arginine intake, it is positively correlated with changes in diastolic blood pressure and hypercholesterolemia in men. And the sources of arginine are turkey breast, chicken, quail, and lentils and pulses, and seaweeds and spinach. So one should try legumes, soybeans, lentils, chickpeas. So one should try and have more of these. And thank you for your attention.